Visit Wednesday, presented by the Danbury Library. Each week we meet, we're going to look at an interesting find from nature and see if we can guess what it is. This week we're looking at this large item right here. Look at this. It's so big, I can't get it all on camera. Can you see it? There we go. Not only is it big, it's also very heavy. And we can see some areas like right here and right here where it looks like there's notches out. Do you see that? Something tore this apart a bit. Yeah. And if we flip it over to the other side, you can see it's kind of rough. Look at that. So it's got a rough texture to it. Like I said, it's very heavy. And if we look at the ends, they kind of end in little finger-like things, don't they? They look kind of like fingers. But if we look at this other part right here, that kind of looks like a weird circle, doesn't it? And the interesting thing about this, it actually came from an animal. So what we're looking at is something that is very big, that ends in these finger-like bits at the end called prongs. But at the other side, it has a circular bit. And it came from an animal. So can you guess what it is? If you'd like to search for yourself, you can pause the video here and do a little research and come back. But if you'd like to know the answer right now, I will tell you in 3, 2, 1. So, do you know what this week's mystery item is? Nope, it's not a stick, though it does kind of look like a stick. It's actually a very special type of bone, one of the fastest growing types of bone currently on the earth. This is a moose antler, and it's very heavy, so I'm going to put it down for a little bit. And in case you're worried, the moose wasn't harmed to get the antler. And what I mean by that, we're going to find out here in a little bit. But first, we need to learn a little bit more about moose. Moose are the largest members of the Cervidae, or the deer family. This means they're actually related to our little white-tailed deer we have running around here. But these guys are massive. The males, which get bigger than the females, can reach heights of up to 10 feet tall at their shoulder. Wow! So I don't know how tall your ceilings are in your house, but in my house, the ceilings only go up to about 8 feet. So we're talking an animal that wouldn't even be able to fit in my room easily. But they're not only tall, they're also heavy. Male moose can weigh up to 1,500 pounds. And the thing is, that's not a lot of fat. That's all muscle. So we're talking a big, powerful animal. So we're going to see moose more towards the northern part of North America, up into Canada, Alaska, and even a little further. And they're also in Eurasia. So the top part of Eurasia, that's also where moose live. So now that we know a little bit about what moose look like, we're going to talk about those antlers. So this antler here, as we said, it's very big, right? Yeah. But the thing is, this is a little moose antler, which means it likely came from a young moose. And how we can tell that is by the size of the antler and the fact that moose actually grow a new pair of antlers every year. And what I mean by this being a small one is that moose antlers, 2 of them together, can reach up to 6 feet wide when they're on top of the moose's head. That's larger than most people are tall. And they can weigh together a total of 40 pounds. That means a single giant moose antler would weigh 20 pounds on its own. Now this guy probably weighs about 8 pounds, so very, very small moose antler. That's a lot of weight to be carrying around on your head, up to 40 pounds, right? Yeah, I wouldn't want to carry that on my head. But luckily for the moose, they're not carrying that much weight year-round. We see moose very early in the spring. We won't be able to tell the female moose and the male moose apart because neither one are going to have antlers. But as the spring starts going into summer, their antlers on the males will start to grow. And at this point, they're going to look really soft and kind of fuzzy. This is because they're covered by a protective skin called velvet. And these are some of the fastest growing bones on the planet. They can grow up to a pound's worth of weight a day. Wow, right? And the reason they're growing that rapidly is because the moose needs to get those antlers as big as possible from the spring into early fall when it needs those big, huge antlers. So fall's coming, and the antlers, they've gotten big. And they've gotten as big as they're going to get on that moose that year. And now something starts to happen. That soft, fluffy velvet that's on there, that skin, well, it starts to actually dry up. And when it dries up, it gets really itchy. Have you ever had dry skin and you feel really itchy and just itchy, 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 itchy? You got to scratch all the time, right? Yeah. Well, the moose are doing that too. And how a moose scratches his antlers, well, it needs a little help. Because moose, they don't have hands. And their hooves can't really reach their heads. So what they do is they rub their antlers all over trees and branches and rocks and anything they can to rub that velvet off. And when they're doing this, they look kind of creepy because the skin's hanging off there. And if you're worried, this doesn't actually hurt the moose. It kind of feels good because they want that itchy, dried up velvet off of those antlers. And soon after all the velvet is off, the antler bone hardens to what we have right here. A very strong, durable, heavy set of bones. Because what they're going to use these for is they're going to use them to fight. Because if you're a moose and you got big antlers on the side of your head, well, you want to show them off. And you like to walk around. You kind of swing your head back and forth, show everyone, look at my big antlers, huh? Yeah, I'm really big and powerful and strong. And you get some territory, which is space that is yours. And you don't want anyone else coming into your territory. But sometimes another moose comes along who also has big antlers. And he's swinging his head back and forth and going, look at my antlers. And when two moose start doing this, they eventually start to fight. And they run at each other and they lock their antlers together. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to push each other back. And the strongest one will eventually be able to push the other one away. And the smaller one that didn't win the fight will run off. And the bigger one will keep that territory. And that's why if we look at this one here, we can see there's a gouge there, right? There is. And there's another one right here. So this moose got into a couple of fights. And we can see the result here. All that damage on the antler. Now we're getting in towards winter. You got a moose, and he's got these big heavy antlers, and he doesn't really need them anymore because they're not fighting over territory now. They're just looking for food. So all of this giant antler sitting on top of your head with blood flowing through it to keep the bone alive, that takes a lot of resources. So instead of carrying these antlers around all the time, the moose does something unique. It actually drops them off. And that's where this part comes in. This attaches to the part of their skull, which is called the pedicle. It's a little bony plate that sits on the top of their head. But when food is getting scarce and they no longer need this giant antler, special cells that are in there actually activate. And these cells are called osteoclasts. And what these osteoclasts do is they actually eat away at the bone, right here. And if we were able to touch it, you will see that it feels very textured, kind of like little prickly bits. And that's because part of this bone here has actually been eaten away. And when this starts to happen, blood flow stops going to the antler, and eventually the connection between the antler here and the pedicle on the head, that weakens. And when that happens, the moose will give itself a little shake of its head and boop, the antler will just fall right off. Small animals like to chew on moose antlers during the winter. And the reason being is that, again, this is bone. And bone has calcium in it. So when small animals like certain rodents and even things like coyotes and wolves need that extra calcium, if they run across a moose antler, they might decide to chew on it and eat it up. So that's why sometimes finding moose antlers is a little tricky. Thank you for joining this week on What Is It Wednesday. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about moose and their antlers. I'll see you next week where we look at another interesting find from nature and see if we can guess what it is. Until then, happy exploring and stay curious. Bye everyone.